Okay, I bought $300 worth of yarn, the $200 knitting needles. All that's left is to buy the pattern. Wait, $8?
I wish I was over exaggerating, but unfortunately, the products of intellectual work have always been valued less than physical products. Movies, TV series, books, video games, and nowadays knitting patterns have always been subjected to piracy. But if in case of, for example, movie piracy, one can say that they're not actually doing anything bad and they're just like fighting big corporations and they are the modern Robin Hood fighting the big bad capitalism. It's not exactly the case for knitwear design. Knitwear designers are small business owners and they're just trying to survive the crazy economy we're living in right now. So, as part of this community, I would love to share their problems and talk a little bit more about how their life is and how the patterns are coming to life. Hi, my name is Nadya. I'm the face behind the Lemony channel where we discuss all things knitting. A few weeks ago, a post appeared on the Danish part of the Instagram. Crea Deluxe, a very well-known brand of yarns and designs, were sharing the story of them finding their designs on a very popular file sharing hosting where their patterns that were illegally distributed were receiving up to 125,000 views. This opened up a conversation on how often this actually happens to other knitwear designers, and I just had to jump down this rabbit hole. So let's discuss knitting patterns theft, the process of making a knitting pattern, maybe talk a little bit about how we can access them for free without actually damaging designers, and also what costs does this process require from the designer. Grab a beverage of your choice and let's dive into it. This video is sponsored by my latest pattern design, Parrot Love Beret. Yarn kit and pattern are available through the link in the description. Facebook pattern sharing groups, file hosting websites, and even dedicated Google Drives. The world of knitwear piracy is just like limitless. So why do people value actual knitting patterns less than physical products? As my lovely friend Kate from Kate Create Design says, you wouldn't steal yarn from the store, hopefully. Why would you steal a pattern? But somehow downloading pirated patterns is not considered such a bad thing. Some even view it as a way to save money and being financially wise. How come?
I don't want to pay for something anyone can do. Like these designers just sit there for an evening, write down the pattern instructions, and then they have the audacity to ask for 15 bucks. It's them stealing from us people, not the other way around.
Wait, how do you think this process works?
Well, they need a sweater, write down the instructions and sell it. Duh.
That simple, huh? Hate to break it to you, but even the most minimalistic design process has a bit more to it than just writing down the steps. The bigger the designer, the longer the process. Let's take a look at how it goes for Kate from Kate Create Designs. She's a US-based small designer who is very well known for her colorful colorwork pattern. Kate starts off every pattern creation with a designing process. This includes thinking of what she wants to create, what techniques to use in every part of her design, finishings on all parts, and stuff like that. After playing through everything, she does the grading. Grading is a term that designers use to describe recounting and replanning all parts of the design to fit different sizes and shapes. It can be just recounting the stitches to fit different sizes of bodies, but since Kate loves making colorwork designs, it also requires her to change the whole colorwork pattern to look good and match stitch count on every size. She specifically mentioned that writing the pattern alone takes her about 40 hours in total. After grading, she starts knitting up the sample. She usually buys the yarn herself and prefers natural fibers, so this is a stage where her expenses tend to get a little out of hand. Altogether, these 3 steps take her around 4 to 5 weeks. When the pattern is ready to be shared with the world, she starts the test call. She collects test knit applications for a week and then chooses a small group of testers that will help her test out the pattern. Test knitting period is on average about 12 weeks for her, and it requires her constant attention to help testers with any problems and to fix any pattern faults. During this phase, she also does everything needed to promote the pattern: marketing, branding, videos on multiple social media. This is also the phase where she's paying the biggest expense for being a designer, the expense of damaging her mental health. To quote Kate, "It's hard not to compare yourself with others. It's hard not to think your worth is in how many likes and followers you have. It's upsetting when you put so much work and effort into a design and people just don't like it. And on top of it all, I have to worry about people stealing my designs." After the pattern has been tested, she sends her pattern into tech editing. This stage, alongside pre release activities, takes her around 1 week. So, altogether, from beginning to the end, it takes her around 18 weeks to release a pattern.
But why would I pay for a PDF? It's like 5 pages. I would probably write it in like 10 minutes.
I mean, go for it. I'm sure every designer would be very jealous of somebody who can write up the pattern in 10 minutes, especially those who have a full time job alongside their creative process. So they kind of have to do it in their free time. Please meet Celine from Woozy by Celine, who is very well known in our community because she works full time. She has a very successful YouTube channel, and at the same time, she cranks up pattern after pattern, and her designs are gorgeous. According to Celine, the sole process of just writing up the pattern and grading it takes her up to 2 weeks. And if that doesn't sound bad, she specifically mentions that, quote, "Since grading is the hardest part for her personally, she does her grading sessions all at once without taking breaks to not lose track of where she is. So when she finally gets to grading on the weekend, she spends 12 hours in a row grading the patterns and grading away." Let's send hopes and prayers for her back and all the health in the world, because imagine sitting at your computer for 12 hours doing math on your weekend between your work sessions, because you do work full time. And every time you think about stealing her pattern, just remember this adorable face and how hard it is for her to suffer through the math shifts.
I saw a million YouTube videos and free patterns of something super similar, so why would I buy it?
Why don't you just use these free ones instead of stealing the paid for ones then?
Well, they're not as good, so I did not like following them, so...
And you don't see irony in this, really. Let's move to the next topic then. Both Kate's and Celine's examples show us that it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of mental power to make a pattern. But let's talk finance.
Yeah, let's do that. You accuse her for stealing, but they just spend their time on it. They still get money in the end, don't they?
Well, welcome to the world of Rebecca from Crea Bear. She's very well known to have extensive size ranges, very universal patterns that let you modificate everything, and she tells you how to. And also, usually one pattern will give you both long-sleeved version, short-sleeved versions, different finishings. So they are super universal. Just take a look at one of her latest designs, the Crail. In one pattern for $10, you get a pattern for a vest, a sweater, a cardigan, and a sleepover. Can you imagine how much work goes into such a design? I couldn't before I asked her. First of all, such pattern requires a lot of tech editing and grading. Depending on the pattern, the work of her tech editors, and she has two of them because of the complexity of her work, it can cost her from £400 to £800 for tech edit and grading just for it. Secondly, she makes at least 2 samples of every design she makes, so that costs her from anywhere from 120 to 250 pounds just for the yarn, for the samples. And after the samples are done, she needs to take pictures of them. Taking photos ranges from 250 pounds to 600 pounds, and that includes the work of her photographer and also yarn shop vouchers for the test knitters that agreed to be part of the photo shoot and model their knits for her, so that she has more pictures to give you a better view of how the garment is gonna look on you. Now it's time to sell the pattern. She has her own website that she has to pay for to host it.
Well, that's her own decision, right? She could have used Ravelry and sell it there, and then she wouldn't need to pay anything.
Yeah, fun fact. Ravelry actually has fees. Ravelry charges you 3.5% of the sales amount when you reach $30 threshold of sales, and they have an additional fee of $50 if you reach the threshold of $1,500 and you're based in EU. PayPal also takes like 10% of the sale amount, so and do not forget the taxes and administrative fees, which is also why Rebecca has an accountant, who she also needs to pay for. It all rounds up in a quite fun and interesting sum, huh? Now imagine how many sales of the $10 pattern she needs to have to just cover the costs of the pattern creation process for her. Every sale counts toward her being able to just continue making these very knitter friendly patterns as her full time job. But if for Rebecca, these costs are already part of the process that she kinda practiced for a long time and perfected and now mastered it up through the time, for some designers, the budget can be a showstopper for even simple things that nowadays are considered like basic for a pattern to have. One of my favorite designers, Phoebe from Friday Knits, told me that she is actually dreaming of translating her patterns into other languages so that more people have access to her patterns. But unfortunately, the fees and also tech editing and a lot of other stuff that goes into her process eats up the whole budget, so she just doesn't have budget for it. Phoebe also opened up about another very important cost that is not actually financial but mental one. For Phoebe, one of the hardest part of being knitwear designer is not being able to bounce off ideas and thoughts of other people and basically working alone on everything. It can feel very isolating until you actually put something out there to so you can like receive feedback. And this is quite a toll to put on your mental health. I actually can relate to that very well because I used to work remotely a lot, and with some remote jobs you can like go to a co-working, or I don't know, you have an office. If you have a hybrid regime, for example, you can go to the office sometimes and meet people, but with some jobs you basically can't, especially if you're working remote with like another country or something. So you're kind of stuck in your bubble, and even me with my social anxiety, sometimes I need socialization alongside my working area. So being a full-time designer is quite a lonely process and it has its cost.
Okay, then, explain this to me. You are saying that we need to respect the pattern writers and designers' time that they spend on making it, but they themselves are literally using people's labor for free. What's up with that?
Now that is a hard topic to discuss. Test knitting has always been like a questionable thing in the community, so I would need another full video to just like dive into it. But if we just take like an overall look at it, it's still not that easy. For example, some people use test knitting for the same act of stealing patterns. They apply to test knit something, they get the pattern, and then they disappear. You never hear from them again, they don't do the knitting, they just took the pattern and ran away. Which is actually kind of silly because the patterns before test knitting have like a very high chance to have mistakes in them and fit problems and everything. So you might as well just like self-draft it if you want to have something similar to the end result. So I don't really get this part. But it is very hard for designers to plan through test knitting because they're not sure they will get the results they expect. And they have to find some different ways to kind of counter that. For example, not send the test knitters the whole pattern and just like cut it into pieces and only give the next piece when the previous is done. It's actually something I saw with my own eyes because when I was test knitting for the very first time, I was test knitting for Kate Create Designs. It was a picnic sweater, her very like summer related pattern. And we had quite a big test group, I would say, but by the end of deadline, I think either I was the only one who has actually finished the sweater and gave her comments on it, or there was like one another girl who did. Everybody else either disappeared or they got bored and switched to another project, so that just didn't make it in time. And some people didn't plan their yarn usage through, so they had to order more yarn, and then there was like the whole tariff thing. So in the end, Kate had to postpone the release of the pattern for a few months. And the pattern was a very clear summer vibes pattern, and she had to release it in autumn. So in the end, the result of her work did not end anywhere near what she expected.
I mean, it's understandable. She's a small designer, right?
Well, okay, but Rebecca is not a small designer, and her success rate for test knits is around 70%. She always needs to look for new ways to just motivate people to actually knit the garment and provide feedback. So she's always thinking about new ways to reward people who are actually doing the test knitting they signed up for. So in the end, it's not exactly free labor, right? And especially since some designers even provide like yarn support for their testers. So I won't go out on the limb to say that all designers are like very great towards their testers. They treat them well. I will never say that, but it's also stupid to say that like all knitwear designers are using slave labor and are abusing other knitters. My first advice will be very simple: libraries. Many libraries around the world have actual pattern books and sometimes even knitting magazines in them, and you never know what you will actually be able to find there. If you don't like physical books for your patterns, you can always check Libby app, which is basically like an online library that you access with your library, like local library card, and it also has a lot of options in it.
But isn't it just like the same as downloading the pattern for free?
Not at all. I reached out to Helena from Fable Knitwear, who is very famous for her very romantic, whimsical, feminine style patterns and pattern books she actually published a few of already. Helena confirmed that libraries pay the licensing fee towards the publisher, which the designer will get royalties from. I also asked her on her opinion on buying knitting pattern books secondhand because I was actually feeling some guilt because I bought her book on Vinted for like $10 and has so many patterns and it felt illegal. But she says that it's actually a great thing to buy books like that secondhand. And I even think it actually makes sense because you rarely need every single pattern in the pattern book, right? So instead of it just rotting on the shelf, it's better to sell it to someone who will use the book more and possibly promote the designer even more by finishing the knits from the book and posting them online. Another way to get the pattern for free is, as I already mentioned, test knitting. If you become a part of the test group, you will receive the pattern for free, usually some kind of a reward for finishing the test knit. So, for example, some designers gift another pattern of them to you when you complete the test knit. And also, you get a deadline, which, as an ADHD girly, I am very happy about. It motivates me to actually finish the object instead of like knitting everything everywhere all at once. You also get to participate in a small group that are basically a knit along kind of situation because you're all knitting the same garment. And it's a very fun community that you can actually become friends with. And you also can get much closer with the designer themselves. For example, that's how I became friends with Kate. In the process of test knitting, we talked a lot and we had so much fun and we became friends, and I would not want to lose that any time. Also, through test knitting, you can showcase your different skills and maybe designer will want your help with something else. For example, that's how I became Kate's tech editor. Which I think she already regrets because I'm sending her a bit too many changes to make. But I really hope she still likes me.
Test knits have super short time frames and they don't fit my lifestyle.
I totally get that, but just continue to look for the designer who uses test knitting timeframes that work with your life schedule. For example, Helena says that she always gives her knitters at least 3 months to knit up her patterns. There are always options. Last but not least, you can look for patterns that are similar to the one you want to make, but not exactly the same thing, or you can even find YouTube tutorials of making something similar. Yes, this will not be exactly the same thing. Yes, you might need to improvise a bit. Yes, it can be not that professionally written, but look at it as a challenge to grow your skill, for example.
But why do some designers put out their patterns for free? There must be something wrong with them.
Yeah, not necessarily. Some designers do it for marketing purposes, for example, to promote their yarn brand, or for example, or to showcase their writing style before actually releasing paid for patterns. Some even distribute their free patterns through their website, so they kind of get the like ad revenue and also like the traffic, the whole traffic to the website helps them. So don't feel too bad about using these free patterns. The designers that posted them have something to get from it as well. So, what have we learned today, folks? The designers spend a lot of money, time, and nerves on the pattern creation. Every pattern contains their blood, sweat, and tears. So, distributing them for free hurts the sweet small business owners. They all have different backgrounds and situations, so please, every time when you look at the pattern, don't forget there's an actual person behind of it. And if I find someone calling Petite Knit a freaking Walmart of knitting patterns, I will start throwing punches. Let the woman who got successful because she did work her off enjoy the results of her hard work, okay? Hope I was able to show you a little bit more of the behind the scenes of knitwear design and that maybe you found something interesting and enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider subscribing or pressing the like button or both. You might also consider following me on Instagram where I share more like real time knitting content, or on TikTok where I post a lot of videos related to silly knitting stuff and jokes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.